is the deal with 1 Kings 22. It seems very odd, maybe not even fair or correct. That's what we're getting into today.
And Second Chronicles.
And Second Chronicles, but I mean, you know.
I always say it's like the shortened version of what we read either in First or Second Kings. It's always how it goes.
So give us what's going on here. Tell us what's going on.
I always feel like Chronicles is like the annoyed version of the story. Like, oh my gosh, like this is what happened in less than 20 words.
That's because the chronicler is trying to get people to worship correctly. So he is actually, in fact, annoyed at when things are done incorrectly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this whole story like comes about because these two kings, the king of Israel and the king of Judah, the king of Judah being Jehoshaphat. I've heard it both ways. Anyway, we'll just say Jehoshaphat because that's what I feel like everybody knows. So anyway, they decide that they would like to kind of like work together to take over Ramoth Gilead. They say that it belongs to them and they want to take over it and defeat defeat the king of Syria. So they're like in cahoots that they're going to do this, but before they do it, they want to know that they're like on the right track. So that's kind of crazy.
What's interesting
they're
is
already doubting their
Jehoshaphat from Judah, and Judah is in a little bit of a better spot, is saying, hey, inquire of the Lord before you do this.
Yeah, but what's interesting though is I think they already have second thoughts about it. The fact that they're like, okay, well, we want to do this. Maybe we should like get somebody to tell us that we're doing it right.
They always inquire of the Lord before they go to battle. It's like a holy war kind of thing.
Yeah, but in this instance, it feels kind of like just even the conversation between them is like, hey, you want to buddy up and we can go and like take over this? It just seems sketchy to begin with.
All right.
At least I think so. So they rally up like 400 of their prophets. And what's interesting, Ryan, you'd mentioned this earlier about the prophets of Baal. What did you say?
The last time we saw 400 prophets gathered together, it was not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was, let's see, when was that? That was back in 1 Kings 18, probably? Yeah, 1 Kings 18. 400 prophets of Baal gathered together to prophesy against our God in favor of Baal. So it might be coincidence. It doesn't seem like it's coincidence. Here we have 400 prophets again, not the same ones, because the other ones were barbecue.
Well, anyway, so they inquire of these prophets. And of course, all the prophets come together. They rally around them, some 400 men, and they ask, they're like, okay, so should we go to battle against Ramoth Gilead or should we just kind of like chill out? And all of them say, go up, for the Lord will give it into the hand of the king. But Jehoshaphat, he gets like a little nervous and he's like, well, like they all said that, but like, isn't there anybody else we can ask? And it's funny because the king of Israel's like, well, we got this other guy, this Micaiah, but he hates me. Like he literally says that. He hates me and he never says anything good about me.
There is some history here that's really important. We've already learned that Jezebel, Ahab's wife, is killing off prophets of God wholesale, just like, dead. We already know that prophets of the true God are very rare in Israel. Right. The Levites escaped Israel into Judah. So God's prophets, God's priests, prophets and priests aren't always the same thing. But there was like an exodus of people who wanted to serve the Lord well into Judah.
But isn't it kind of interesting, though, like, they have these 400 men that are all saying, oh, you should do it, you should do it. And, like, Jehoshaphat's kind of like, meh, I don't think that's totally right. But at the same time, it's like, well, all these 400 people say it's okay.
So what I'm trying to do here is just help you understand context, because if you just fly in onto this story, it looks like, wait, there were 400 prophets and they said it was okay. But when you understand the climate of what it was to live under Ahab, you realize that there's not many real, true prophets
and
in
400
Israel.
People claiming to be such should be, like, super concerning to me anyway.
We already know from the history of this book that there's not many true believers around. And we also see in the text explicitly, they don't seem to actually inquire of the Lord at all.
So you've got all these 400 guys. They're all saying one thing. And then Jehoshaphat like feels the need to call on someone else. And what should, I guess, stick out to you is like, there's the one king that really wants to just go for it based on what these 400 guys are saying. The other king is like, hey, let's just like, is there anybody else we can hear from? And the first reaction from the king of Israel is like, well, there's this other guy, but he always says something negative about what I'm about to do. So like, to me, that seems a little bit like, okay, well, maybe he's actually speaking truth into your life and you just don't like what you're hearing. So, ironically enough, that's a bummer. Ironically enough, Micaiah, who we are hearing about in this chapter, he does prophesy against the king of Israel. He says, like, well, actually, at first he says, well, yeah, just go ahead, go get him. And he's like, that's not true. You don't ever tell me that I'm going to be prosperous in any situation. What do you actually think? And Micaiah says, well, I mean, you're actually going to be utterly destroyed by the Lord. And the king does not like what he hears and throws Micaiah into prison. So it's just like this really weird story. And I guess Micaiah does also say, like, hey, all those prophets that are telling you to go, like, the Spirit of the Lord has actually put a lying spirit into their mouths. Like, you're not going to be prosperous. It's like, there's definitely tension.
Oh, boy. So does the Lord just send lies to all these prophets?
Again, I think when there's evil stuff happening, then he's going to punish that, just like the Israelites.
We've explained many times before that I think the way I choose to see this, I think it is fair to see it this way, is that when you have people who intend to pursue evil, the Lord allows them to continue pursuing evil. So is it a surprise that these false prophets are being deceived? No, it's not, because they're false prophets. They're wicked people. Because they are lying about speaking on behalf of the Lord. So this is another instance, and this is a tricky chapter for sure, and you can take some pretty weird things out of it if you're not careful. Here, the Lord is allowing these lying prophets to continue lying to accomplish what he wants to see happen.
I mean, because he's actually heard from the mouth of an actual prophet saying, hey, you're not going to believe it anyway. Yeah. So, like, why does it even matter? Just go ahead, go to war, do what you want to do.
So God has already sovereignly ordained that Ahab is done. Like, his reign is over. He did show him grace in that Ahab repented and he gave him mercy. But Ahab, in this story, is just back to pursuing his old wicked ways. You can see from this story as well, he hasn't really adjusted anything in his life. He believes that God...
Actually, he just silenced the prophet. That's what he did.
he believes that God exists to honor him. Like, Ahab believes that his prophets should be telling him good things about himself.
Only.
That's a poor belief about God. God doesn't exist to just support you in what you're doing, no matter what level of leadership you're in.
Yeah.
If you exist to bring honor to yourself, you are against God. And if you believe that God exists just to help you honor yourself, you're against God. And so we see that at work at this story. I think we see that at work in any number of places, across our modern age. There are how many mega churches do we need to hear about with all these giant scandals where the pastors clearly got off the rails and started surrounding themselves with people who only talked about how great the pastor was? It's like, oh, guess what? They stopped honoring the Lord. That seems not good. So,
which is a real bummer. And like, I think we can tell even from this story, like that same sin still exists today.
Of
like
course
they
it
still
does.
struggled with the same thing that we struggle with today, which is super unfortunate because ultimately for Ahab, as we read throughout the rest of the chapter, Jehoshaphat and Ahab go out to battle. And Ahab tries to like disguise himself in order to like not be seen to be killed. So
pause that part of the story too. So Ahab says, "You prophet of the Lord, you're a liar. Go to jail." And then it's like, okay, so do you believe these false prophets then?
Well, he hides himself.
Not completely, because he disguises himself.
Yeah.
So these prophets said, no, go out, you'll be victorious. And he's like, yes, I believe you, but I am going to be disguised.
Yeah. But what's crazy, though, is that some random person, so they start retreating because the battle's not going well. But some random person decides to shoot an arrow right at Ahab.
Yep.
And apparently it shoots right between his armor, and by the end of the evening, by the end of the night of the battle, he dies. And when they clean out his chariot, a bunch of dogs come along and lick up the blood of Ahab. And that is also, once again, prophesied. So, there's all these situations where you can keep turning away from the truth over and over and over and over and over again, but all it's going to do is just lead you to, serious demise.
You can even surround yourself with 400 people that will tell you how right you are. And you will still be wrong.
Oh, that's a bummer.
So this chapter just has God's sovereignty all over it. Like, God sovereignly led Ahab to want to fight these people. God sovereignly allowed these lying prophets to continue lying. God sovereignly led an arrow right through his disguise and his armor. God sovereignly directed dogs to lick up his blood. Like, these are not accidents.
Right.
This is like, wow, God said that. God said that. God said that. God said that. So what does this story show us? Even though you think you are amazing, even though you think you are completely in charge, even though you surround yourself with everybody who's willing to say that you're in charge, you're still not. It's God.
God, yeah, every time. So anyway, I guess for today, a good your part is just recognizing God's sovereignty, but also recognizing your need for submission to his authority. So he is in charge of it all, and we need to thank him for that. And also just hand over anything that we're just gripping tight in our own hands. So I don't know what that could look like. It could look like many different things. For us right now, it is just an immense amount of just uncertainty. So just handing that over to the Lord, the Lord is sovereign. He's in control. He's got this. And we just need to be obedient to his will, regardless of how insecure or nervous or anxious or whatever it is we feel, because ultimately he's in control and he's led us to this moment and will continue to lead us throughout the rest of our lives. So whatever that looks like for you today, hopefully this is an encouragement to you that God is sovereign. He is in control. But yeah, we're finished with Kings. So we will be back again tomorrow as we jump into
2 Chronicles.
Yep, that's the one. All right. See you guys tomorrow.
Thanks so much for listening to God's Plan, Your Part. If anything stuck out to you, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to receive a Bible, you can email us at godsplanyourpart@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider supporting us through the link in our description. We love that you're on this journey with us, and we hope you have a great day. See you tomorrow.